Have you ever stopped to wonder why some women, especially those who've walked through seasons of love, loss, and rediscovery, still choose to express their deepest affection in quiet, personal ways? To some, it may seem surprising, to others unnecessary. But to a wise woman who's tasted the richness of connection and given herself fully to love without shame, intimacy is never just about the physical, it's about the meaning behind it. In a gentle interview filled with warmth and truth, a 92-year-old woman once shared this: "There are ways we reach another person's heart that words can't express." That sentence stayed with me, because in a world where closeness is often measured in performance, where affection is counted in actions, not presence, we forget that sometimes a quiet, intentional gesture, offered with care and presence, can hold more power than any conversation ever could. This isn't a conversation about technique. It's not about doing something because you feel you should. It's about something far deeper: choice, trust, connection, confidence. This is about the kind of woman who gives not to impress, but to express, who shows up not out of obligation, but because she feels seen, safe, and grounded enough to share something sacred. In today's video, we're going to explore what true intimacy means inside an emotionally intelligent, respectful relationship, especially for women who see these moments not just as physical, but as expressions of devotion, freedom, and soulful connection. You'll hear the wisdom of someone who has lived through generations, who knows the difference between giving from duty and giving from desire. And maybe by the end of this conversation, you'll realize that what happens in moments of closeness isn't just about touch or routine. Sometimes it's about healing. Sometimes it's about power. And at its most meaningful, it's about love, spoken not with words, but through presence. So take a breath, set aside any judgment or story you've inherited, and let's begin this gentle, honest conversation about a kind of connection that doesn't just move the body, but reaches the soul. There's a moment, a quiet, deliberate moment, when a woman says yes, not because she's trying to fulfill someone's expectation, not because she feels pressured to prove anything, but because something inside her feels open enough to offer something real. And when she chooses to share herself in a deeply personal way, it's never just about the physical closeness. It's about the intention behind it. Because when a woman gives from a place of awareness and presence, she's not simply responding to touch. She's responding to trust. Her actions say, without needing to explain, "I feel safe with you. I choose this. I want to bring joy into this space, not because I have to, but because I genuinely want to." It's easy to overlook how meaningful that kind of offering is. To the outside world, it might look ordinary, just another gesture between partners. But to a woman who knows her worth, this is a quiet expression of connection wrapped in care. She say, "I see you. I value you. And in this moment, I'm choosing to meet you fully, not just with my body, but with my heart." For many women, especially those in long-term, emotionally safe relationships, these moments become less about novelty and more about presence. It becomes a way of saying, "I know who you are. I understand what brings you joy, and I take genuine pleasure in sharing that joy with you." There's something profoundly different about the woman who initiates, not to impress, but to connect, not to win approval, but to participate in something shared and soulful. And when that space is mutual, when both people are present, curious, and respectful, intimacy becomes something far more powerful than just closeness. It becomes a kind of language, a soft, unspoken way of saying, "You matter to me. I feel alive here. I choose you, not just with my words, but with my presence." And here's what makes it sacred. It's not about performance. It's not transactional. It's not offered from fear or from needing to hold on to someone. It's given because she has nothing to prove, only something to share. So when a woman chooses to express herself in this way, what she's really doing is showing up fully, physically, emotionally, and soulfully. Not because she's supposed to, but because she feels ready. And that is where intimacy begins to feel like something sacred, something alive, something deeply human. No woman truly opens herself in intimacy without safety. That's the part so many people overlook. They see the gestures, the smiles, the closeness, but they don't always see the emotional roots beneath them. Because for a woman to offer not just her time, but her presence, her real, honest, unguarded presence, she must feel something deeper: protection, care, and trust. This kind of openness isn't weakness. It's not passivity. It's not performance. It's a brave choice, a courageous softness that only blossoms when she knows the space is safe. Safe to slow down, safe to be unsure, safe to feel everything and not be judged for it. Trust says, "You'll meet my tenderness with care. You'll hear me, not rush me. You'll stay when I unfold slowly." And when that trust is earned, not demanded, but built over time, something powerful happens. A woman stops hiding. She no longer moves through connection like it's a chore or a risk. She moves into it like it's home. Because in that kind of relationship, her body is not a transaction. It's not a test. It's not a checklist. It becomes an extension of her spirit, a way she expresses joy, love, and emotional generosity. And the person who receives that, he's not just receiving attention. He's receiving something sacred: her presence, her resonance, her aliveness. But here's the truth we don't talk about enough. When that emotional safety is missing, when she feels unseen, dismissed, or misunderstood, no matter how strong the attraction may be, the deeper connection fades. Because her heart retreats long before her body does. This is why emotional safety is not optional, it's essential. Because women often connect from the inside out. If she feels cherished, she becomes generous. If she feels rushed or unheard, she quietly closes, sometimes without even knowing why. So when a woman chooses to engage deeply, to bring her full self into a moment of closeness, know this: she's not doing so to meet a standard. She's not giving out of fear. She's giving because the space feels grounded enough to hold her. And that softness, that's not her being small, that's her being real. Because trust isn't built in grand gestures. It's built in the little things, in how you listen, how you pause, how you stay present. And when she feels emotionally held, not just touched, but truly understood, she isn't just open. She's free. There's a quiet truth many women discover not from books or advice columns, but from the slow unfolding of life itself. Sometimes giving can feel just as intimate as receiving, not because we're trying to earn love, not because it's expected, but because when it's freely chosen, giving becomes an act of self-expression. When a woman offers herself in a moment of tenderness, whether it's a touch, a kiss, a soft glance, or a shared silence, it's not just for her partner. It's for both of them. It's about creating a space where joy isn't measured by what's taken, but by what's shared. In a healthy relationship, this kind of giving doesn't follow a script. It's not a trade. It's not, I do this, so you'll do that. It becomes something far more honest. I want to offer this because it brings us closer. Your happiness deepens mine. I take joy in what brings you joy. And when rooted in love, trust, and emotional awareness, this kind of generosity becomes powerful, because offering joy on your own terms isn't about pleasing, it's about presence. It's about choosing how you show up, how you love, how you connect. It becomes an expression of agency, not obligation, a statement of truth, not performance. It's a quiet celebration of knowing that your affection isn't a duty, it's a gift. And let's be honest, there's something beautiful about seeing someone you care for light up with happiness, knowing that your presence helped create that moment. It affirms the bond. It nurtures the connection. It says we're in this together. And when both people feel safe to give without fear of being used, and free to receive without guilt or expectation, intimacy stops being about roles. It becomes a shared language, one where giving and receiving flow back and forth like breath, natural, effortless, full of meaning. Because when a woman offers something from a place of strength, when she chooses to show up fully, not because she has to, but because she wants to, what she's really offering is herself, not just her attention or her time, but her clarity, her softness, her emotional truth. And that is powerful, because when connection is mutual, grounded, and free of pretense, intimacy becomes less about doing and more about being yourself, being present, being open to discovering joy, not just through touch, but through togetherness. Let's pause here, because there's something deeply important that must be said, especially in a world that often tells women who they should be, how they should act, and what they should give. Intimacy is not one size fits all, and neither are the ways we choose to express it. Just because a certain expression of closeness feels meaningful to some doesn't mean it resonates with everyone. And that's not just okay, it's powerful. We each carry our own stories, our own histories, our own boundaries, and what feels sacred to one woman may feel unfamiliar, uncertain, or even uncomfortable to another. There's no prize for doing everything. There's no medal for checking every box. And there is no shame in saying, it doesn't feel right for me. Oh, I'm still discovering what closeness means in my life. Because true connection isn't built on compliance. It's built on honesty. Honesty with yourself. Do I want this? Do I feel safe here? Am I curious? Or am I just trying to meet someone else's expectation? And honesty with your partner. This is where I feel open. This is where I feel unsure. This is what I need from you. Not solutions, but listening. The most authentic relationships aren't made of people who do everything. They're built on people who honor what's real. Because when you feel emotionally safe enough to say no, you also create the freedom to say yes, when and if that moment ever arrives. And the right partner, he'll never push you past your comfort. He won't rush you, convince you, or treat your hesitation as rejection. He'll listen. He'll respect your pace. And in that space of respect, trust deepens, whether something happens or not. So if this conversation has ever made you feel behind, or not enough, or unsure if you're doing intimacy right, please release that now. You are not measured by what you give or how much or how often. You are not defined by someone else's story. You are measured by how deeply you know yourself and how bravely you stand in that knowing. Because real intimacy isn't about more, it's about truth. It's about showing up as who you are, honoring your own timing, and giving only when the moment feels honest, not when it feels expected. And that kind of truth, it makes every choice sacred, every yes meaningful, and every no an act of self-respect. When two people are deeply connected, not just physically, but emotionally and mentally, intimacy begins to take on a different shape. It stops being about expectation. It stops being about performance. And it becomes something much more meaningful. It becomes an invitation, an exploration, a journey you don't rush through or try to perfect, but one you walk together, hand in hand. That's the quiet beauty of building a mature relationship. You're no longer trying to impress one another. You're trying to understand yourself, each other, and the subtle ways your desires evolve over time. In this kind of space, expressions of affection, whatever form they take, become part of a greater landscape, not a checklist, but a canvas painted with trust, curiosity, and joy. It's not about what's expected. It's about what's shared, what's discovered gently with openness and patience. Because real intimacy isn't stagnant. It breathes. It changes. It grows when both people feel safe enough to say, I've never tried this before, but I'm open. I'm curious about what brings us closer. I want to explore, not for novelty, but for connection. This kind of openness doesn't ask for perfection. It simply asks for presence. It's not about becoming someone you're not. It's about expanding into who you're becoming. Together, and exploration doesn't mean pressure. It means pausing, asking questions, noticing how your partner responds to tone, to pace, to energy, to emotion. Sometimes exploration means laughter. Sometimes it means stillness. Sometimes it means stopping halfway through and saying, not today, but thank you for being here with me. And that's intimacy too. Because every shared moment, every time you show up with honesty and vulnerability, you build trust. You say without speaking, I feel safe enough to be human with you. To not have all the answers. To try, even if it's imperfect. And slowly, with each of those moments, you stop trying to impress your partner, and you start hearing them, feeling them, being with them. You begin to attune not just to their needs, but to their presence, their breath, their silence, their quiet yes, their unspoken no. And that's when intimacy becomes something sacred, not because it's grand, but because it's real. It's not about the act. It's about the attention. So whether you're exploring something new or rediscovering what you already love, let it be gentle. Let it be mutual. Let it be led not by expectation, but by trust. Because real connection doesn't live in technique. It lives in togetherness. As we come to the close of this conversation, let's take a quiet breath together, not to analyze, not to judge, but simply to reflect. What if everything you were taught about intimacy was just one part of a much larger truth? What if real closeness, the kind that makes you feel seen, held, and understood, has very little to do with how much you give, or how often you say yes, or how well you meet someone else's idea of desirable? What if real intimacy isn't about proving anything, but about remembering who you are? It's about choosing with clarity, connecting with intention, and giving, not because you feel expected to, but because something inside you says, I feel safe here. I feel ready. I feel like me. One wise woman, whose words still echo with warmth, once said, the body is only one part of the story. What matters most is how you show up. And she was right. Because what happens behind closed doors isn't a performance. It's a language of trust, of patience, of emotional safety, of the courage it takes to say, this is where I am today. This is how I love. This is what I long to share, if and when it feels true. Whether you choose to explore certain forms of closeness or not. Whether you feel open or cautious, curious or uncertain, please remember this. Your worth is not defined by what you do. It is defined by how deeply you honor who you are. You don't need to copy someone else's version of connection. You don't need to meet a partner's checklist. And you certainly don't need to measure your value by what you offer physically. You get to choose. You get to say, this feels right for me. Or, I'm still learning what feels safe. Or, I'm not ready, and that's okay. You get to bring all of your wisdom, your tenderness, your truth into every relationship without apology. And the right partner, he will meet you there. Not just for the closeness, but for the honesty behind it, for the soul beneath it. So here's your quiet invitation. Let go of shame. Let go of pressure. Let go of the story that says love has to look a certain way to be real. And instead, replace it with presence. Replace it with curiosity. Replace it with freedom. Because whether you are 22 or 72, whether you're just beginning or rediscovering what lights you up, you are still allowed to feel, to want, to say no, to say yes, to change your mind, to grow. Real intimacy doesn't ask you to give yourself away. It asks you to stay connected to yourself, while sharing something sacred with someone who sees you. And that is what makes love feel real.